This is Diana Sullivan in Austin, Texas. Today I'm going to demonstrate how to make an easy lace-covered Christmas ornament. This is a 3-inch ornament, shiny red, and I'm using some fairly thin yarn. It's Forcell Chamal. It's in a white. You could use a sparkly yarn or whatever you have, but it needs to be fairly thin. And I'm using my Brother 965i on tension 5, and I'm going to cast on over 60 needles. Now, playing with this, I have figured out that it's a little easier to do if I start with waste yarn. I'm going to cast on every other needle, so I'm on needle number 30 on the left and needle number 29 on the right. It's going to end up being 60 needles though. I'm threading up with this red yarn, knitting across. I'm hanging a comb, and I'm hanging a weight on each end, and I am not putting the in-between needles into work yet. First, I'm going to knit a few rows with this red yarn. Now, I've knitted several rows with the red yarn, and I've ended over on the right. I'm going to use a contrasting yarn as a row of ravel cord. I've got some slippery pink yarn that makes wonderful ravel cord. That puts my carriage on the left-hand side when I start with the white yarn. I've cut the ravel cord, and I'm just going to put a clothespin on each end of the ravel cord. Threading up with the white, I knit from left to right. Now I bring the in-between needles into work, including needle number 30, which is one beyond the needles that are in work currently. And I'm going to knit 2 rows. Now I'm all set up to begin my lace transfers. The stitch pattern is Stitch World number 104, which is an unusual pattern because it makes rather large holes. It almost looks like it's crocheted. You'll find this is a very interesting pattern to work because it ends up making 2 empty needles together. To program this machine for pattern 104, I press step, and the pattern number light comes on after 2 steps. On the 3rd light, it says that I had it on 103. Well, 103 was one of the lace patterns I tried for this ornament that I didn't like as well as 104. So I press clear entry to get that out and put in 104. Oops, I typed in 704 again. Press clear entry, 104. And then step, step, step until the ready light is lit. I'm putting my row counter on 0, 0, 0. And we're going to do 20 rows of knitting with lace. The lace carriage doesn't count with the row counter. It slips by and doesn't click it. But the main carriage counts each time that it knits rows. So here I come starting this lace. I'm on the start row. It picks out every 4th needle, and I go to the left. It transfers those stitches onto the adjacent needle and picks out another needle. I go to the right, and it puts those stitches on the needle to the right, and look, 2 empty needles together. Very unusual. But the way that this works, it gets away with it because of the way that it moves the stitches next time. So now I park the lace carriage again on the left, and I knit 2 rows with my main carriage. The next repeat is just a little bit different. It picks out a different needle for the first transfer. And again, it puts 2 needles empty, but there are 2 different needles from the ones before. The beep indicates that that is a whole repeat of the lace pattern. And I'm going to just keep going and do 20 rows of lace. That is, there'll be 20 knitted rows. Well, I'm on row counter 18, so I do 19, 20 with my main carriage. And now I'm going to do something that might surprise you a little. I'm going to do one more lace transfer. I want to finish up with some empty needles. Now, I'm just going to take my finger and put all those empty needles back in a position so that they don't knit. I'm going to knit 2 rows with my main carriage. Cut my yarn, leaving a tail that I can sew with. I've unthreaded the machine, and I'm going to thread a tapestry needle. Now, when you see directions on a pattern that say to sew off the stitches, what we're going to do is take the stitches from the needles onto the tapestry needles yarn. So I'm taking the weights off of my comb down below. I don't want that much weight. And I'm taking off a couple of clothespins, so that gets the hardware off. Now I take my tapestry needle and I slip it into the middle of the first loop and just pop it off the needles of the machine and onto the tapestry needle. And I just pop these right on to my needle. You'll find that you can sew stitches off rather quickly. I'm taking my time and trying not to split the yarn. And after I have, I don't know, 8 or 10 stitches, my needle's a little bit full, so I drew the yarn through those stitches and I keep going. Just a few stitches to go. You have to be a little bit careful with the last few stitches. Try not to lose one. Now I'm going to take the comb off and we'll get the waste yarn off. Removing my comb. I'm going to grab one end of my pink ravel cord and tug it out. Kind of a long piece. And remove the red waste yarn. Now I have this funny looking thing. It has 2 ends of yarn coming off it, and both ends of yarn gather it up. To begin installing the cover on the ball, I wrap the knitted fabric around it, grab the end of the yarn and pull it up, adjusting it roughly to the size of the top. I'm going to thread the needle and secure that gathered edge by sewing back through those stitches. I just go through the stitches the same way that the yarn went through them the first time, working my way around the ball. And now when I pull that up, because I've sewed around it twice, it'll stay. Now I'll flip to the bottom, grab the other end of the yarn and just gather it up. I'm going to do the same thing I'm going to sew around that circle again and gather and gather and get it as tight as I can. And I'll come back on camera when I have that secured. Once I have the bottom of the cover drawn tight, then I just need to do a tidy close to the edge mattress stitch along this one open side. So I'll do that now. Now I haven't found a way to get an invisible seam, so I'm just going to go for a neat tidy seam. So here I am mattress stitching along the edge, just grabbing a row close to the edge on one side and then the other. And then every few stitches I draw it up, and I'll work my way down to the other end of the seam. Once my seam up the side is done, I just need to hide my ends. I like to just work them in around the top, and then clip the yarn close. And there's my ball, all finished.